Okay, live video starting. Okay. Okay. Okay, looks like I'm live. Boy, there was a little bit of excitement there because things were slow. We got a new satellite internet set up, and according to the news, there's a bunch of magnetic storms that are affecting satellites, which was happening to me this morning. My internet that I was very excited about wasn't happening, but now it is. So that's great. So I am live. I don't. Oh, there's one viewer. If you can let me know. Wait, I'm not ending the video. Sorry, things are happening here. Um, yeah, hopefully you can hear me. Should be able to hear me. If you can't, somebody let me know because I will start talking. Anybody want to just write a comment in and let me know if you can hear me? That would be great. Otherwise, I will be talking to myself, which is something I frequently do. So that's fine with me. But it would be good to know. I think I've got my system all set up. I got a little bit distracted by the fact that my internet was once again pre-satellite system slow. So anyway, um, there's one reaction. I see thumbs up. Looks good to me. Okay, great. All right. Well, then I'm just going to get started here. Thanks for joining me here. Thank you. Hey, good morning, Eileen. Thanks for coming. Um, I hope you survived those storms. We got a great thunder and lightning storm, I think later that day. That was pretty nice. But yeah, so thanks for coming. Today's a pretty exciting day because we've got a group of students from the Our Sisters School in New Bedford, Mass. Now, it is an all girls school, and it's a private, no fee program, and they've come up to Vermont. And last night, I'm not quite sure whether they slept in a cabins or in a tent or whatever. I'm going to find out. They came up to do a little bit of outdoor stuff in Vermont, and then later today, they're going to come to Lemon's Hope Sanctuary, which is not far from me. My friend Sarah Matters' property where we have animals, and it's also a training center for dog training. And we've got a mini horse and some goats and sheep and dogs and a cat and guinea pigs. So, really looking forward to getting the girls introduced to positive reinforcement. And they get to play with the animals, and the animals always love this kind of thing. So, that's happening. Well, as soon as I'm done here, I'll be getting ready to go over there and pick up some, get ready for their arrival, which is exciting. So anyway, I had put it out that I was going to be doing this and asking for people if they had any questions. And I did get a question, which is a great question. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. Now, if you have something else you might like me to talk about and you want to put it in the comments, I'll check that as we go. But the question was, how do you work with puppy mill dogs that you've now pulled out of the mill, out of the puppy farm, and you've got them now? How do we help these dogs? So the first thing that I encourage people to do when you are uh, beginning to think about how do we help these dogs is to recognize that these dogs are lacking skills. We talk about skill deficits a lot, and people might think, well, what does that mean? Skill deficits, what are you talking about? And what it refers to is that animals any species, including people, learn how to survive to whatever degree they do survive, to whatever quality of survival they have, because certainly, you can stay alive but not necessarily have a great quality of life or a necessarily good welfare. So uh, every individual learns how to survive in their environment. And And so that learning involves a bunch of different skills. Can you go search for food? Can you consume the food? Can you find mates? Can you reproduce? Can you protect yourself from danger? Um, all of those things. I mean, those basics, there's the basic survival skills that an individual needs, and natural selection has played a role in what those behaviors might be for every individual, for any individual. Like uh, baby mammals need to be able to suckle, they need to be able to suck. If they can't, they won't be able to nurse. And that's a skill. And we many mammals kind of come prepared to be able to do that. It's like rather than having to learn to do it, it saves a little brain space, brain real estate, to just sort of come to the party ready to do that. It doesn't mean that everybody does it well, and some don't do it. And unless we help the ones that aren't very good at it, they're probably not going to make it. And they're not very good at suckling genes are going to, leave the party. So, uh, so there are a bunch of different skills, and there are skills that they learn or while they're developing, and then there may be skills that they don't learn that they need. So when you're living in a cage or in a kennel or in a basement or in the tied up in a backyard, there are certain skills that you're not going to learn. And then when you are rescued and you then change environments, whatever skill set you have is not likely, and quite often doesn't, it isn't applicable to a new environment. I mean, this happens to people too, who change environments, who move, who immigrate. They may have got really great skills, but when they immigrate, for one reason or another, they don't necessarily, either they can't apply them. Years ago, I was working on a construction site, and it was really just a lot of manual labor, and there were a bunch of workers, day workers there. And somebody said to me, that guy over there who's doing manual labor, back in his country that he came from, he was a civil engineer. And yet, but because in this new environment, that wasn't an option for him. And so he was doing whatever he needed to do, and he was developing new skill sets to do it. And we see this happening, with animals, especially these animals who have grown up in these deprived environments, possibly environments where they felt threatened a lot. Many of their skills have to do with escaping or avoiding something that scares them. Right? They're very good at uh, running away to the corner of the cage, or running away, hiding under the bed, or whatever. And that's what we see. When they come to our homes, they're really good at that escape avoidance behavior. What they're not really good at is coming over and begging at the dinner table to get food, because, hey, they never learned that skill, right? So we look now, we may not want that skill, we may not want a dog to come and beg at the table, but it is something that lots of pet dogs learn to do. They learn how to approach people and get people to give them food. That's a skill. uh, Being able to walk through doorways is a skill. Being able to have somebody handle you and clip a leash on is a skill. uh, and I'm going to add that when we're teaching these skills to the animals, that we also include in not just that you have the skill to stand still while somebody clips a leash on you, but also that there's an element of what we might call joy or comfort in it. You're cool with it. It's okay. No problem. Go ahead, do it. Go ahead, put the leash on. Come on, let's go. We really want to have that piece of it. So whenever we get these animals from these deprived environments, our inclination as wonderful human beings, as most people I've met involved in rescue are, is to start giving them all the good stuff. Like, I want to just give you all the good stuff. And however, they've never, because they've never had access to much of this good stuff, it has not yet been developed as reinforcement. They don't understand the value of people reaching out and touching them, right, to get that scratch or that belly rub or whatever it is. They haven't learned that the reinforcement that we want them to be able to take advantage of, or with the things that we want them to find reinforcing, they have no experience with, or very little experience with it, and possibly even adverse experience with some of those conditions and some of the things that we think should be reinforcing. So for example, I've often watched the videos where somebody goes and they get a whole collection of dogs from a laboratory or from a hoarder, and they're just so excited to free these animals, like to get them out of their little cages, that they take them somewhere and they just let them out, and they expect that the animal's going to go woohoo, big open space and grass. They've never been in big open space or grass or with traffic going by or noises or a bunch of people standing around, and they are terrified. What we also know is that within any population of animals, there's going to be variations within that population. So there's going to be some animals who are going to be like, woohoo, yay, this is great, I love it. And then there are going to be the animals that are going to, all along the spectrum. And depending in that spectrum can vary in its size. So sometimes there's very little variation between them, and then sometimes there's a lot of variation between the animal who's like, oh, this is cool, I'm ready, bring it on, give me more of this open space and grass and people. And then you're going to have the ones who are like, whoa, get me out of here. The problem with many of the, when we do that, we understand it's well intentioned. The problem is that if you happen to have, or you likely do have, an individual who is not ready for whatever reason, whatever happened to them, whether it's genetics or they happen to have certain experiences that prepared them to find certain outcomes reinforcing, is that when we do that with an animal who doesn't find it reinforcing, who is actually terrified by being handled. And you'll see this sometimes in the videos where people climb into cages with these fearful dogs and they touch them and, oh, it's okay. And they pet them and the animal is cowering and sometimes even screaming. But because the person has good intentions and believes, oh, well, they're going to learn that I'm safe and this is going to be wonderful, they do this. And that, again, some animals might get used to it. Some might go, okay, this is fine, I'm safe and no problem. But then you're going to have the others who that was their first exposure and now they're terrified. And you don't get a chance to do that first trial again. That's, that basically is it. And you might just consider it at that point. Once you've done it, it's okay, this is what we got, this is my baseline, I'm going to look at it as my baseline, and now I want to try to improve it. And how am I going to try to improve their response the next time, rather than just continuing with the same kind of intervention that we try, which I often refer to as the suck it up and deal approach with animals. So I talk about how do we do, what do we think about? So the first thing is you recognize that. You recognize that these animals may have serious skill deficits. There's lots of things that they don't know how to do, and they don't understand, or they haven't learned why they should even do them to begin with. And we say, well, because it's wonderful, because it's really fun to go for walks in the woods. It's really fun to jump up on the couch. It's really fun to do all of these things, right? We have to teach them those. They need to learn that. So I think of it and I talk about it as a braid, because there are three pieces, three steps to it. That's how I think about it. Okay, this is not anything that's, this is just my way of framing this problem of how do we help these dogs, and I call it a braid because they're not separate events. We talk about them separately, but we don't have any reason to believe that they are occurring explicitly on their own, that they're likely happening at the same time. And so we should think about them and we should manage the dogs as though these things are happening at the same time. And the first thing is And again, there's no hierarchy here. I'm just calling them 1 through 3, just for convenience, and because it works with the braid. Uh, is that the animal needs to feel safe, whatever that looks like for that individual. And that's part of our job, is what does this animal require in order to experience what I believe is a sense of safety or the absence of threat towards them physically. So, uh, and that's going to be different for every individual, and that's what we do, and that's what we, when we look at them, and the more you know your species, the more you'll be able to recognize when an individual might be feeling as though they're threatened. uh, it's why I'm often a little bit nervous whenever I work with a new species, because I don't necessarily know that. I don't know what a parrot who is starting to feel threatened or upset with me necessarily looks like until they bite me. So, and I would like to skip that part, right? So, the more you know your species, the better able you'll be able to do to recognize what it looks like, what fear and feeling threatened and feeling unsafe would look like. We're inferring those emotional responses, and I think with it's reasonable, that it's a pretty good guess anyway, that they're feeling unsafe. So we have to provide that, and people often struggle with this because it looks like, especially at the beginning, it looks a lot like just complete isolation. Oh, what are we gonna do? Just let them hide under the bed all day? Well, yeah, but that's not the ultimate goal, right? That's not our goal. Isn't to have an animal who can't come out from under the bed, or can't leave the house, or can't come into the house, or can't be handled, can't be approached. That's not our goal. That's not what we're our final outcome is. But to start with, that's what we need to do. We need to provide them with that access to safety, to conditions under which they feel safe and unthreatened. So that's one strand of the braid. The other strand of the braid is creating good associations, right? So I talked about, we take these dogs from a really deprived situation, and then we sort of give them the world and they're terrified. Well, that's a bad association. We've created a bad association, because they were scared. They we introduced them to an environment, we introduced them to a set of conditions, we introduced them to us, and in the process scared them. And that's doesn't help us in the long run, right? What we need to do is to be very considerate of how we are going to begin to introduce uh, environments and any stimuli in the environment to them, especially us. And that's hard because we're the ones that have to take care of them. And so in some ways we're really stuck between a rock and a hard place often, and I'm not denying that, and recognizing that. But that doesn't negate the need for being considerate of what it is that we're going to do with them. So creating those good associations with them. And often for many of these animals, because they don't have a lot of reinforcement uh, preferences. They don't have a bunch of choices, so to speak, about what it is that they're going to find reinforcing, because they haven't had much experience. And so most of their reinforcement comes from escape avoidance or negative reinforcement, maybe food. Some of them, they've made that association between people coming and getting food, but they still don't necessarily feel safe with the people. And I often say this to folks. Plenty of people go to their work every day to pick up a paycheck, and they still hate their job. And we don't want that. We really want to try to create conditions and repetitions so that all of those interactions between the animal and their caregivers and their environment have good associations. And in many cases, less is more as far as it goes with contact. or the distance between us, or the duration we spend with them, how much, how long, if we have to handle them, can we handle them for as short a interval as possible? If I need to do this, can we do it quickly? Um, and can we do it in the least, is there a way that we can do this in a way that's going to be the least aversive for the animal? And that's tricky and that's hard to do. But when we enter into that situation, what we don't come up with, oh well, they're just going to have to learn to love it, they're just going to have to learn to deal, because that's life, suck of it and deal, put on your, your big kid panties, and whatever, all of the things that we tend to say about um, somebody having to get used to something that isn't very comfortable for them. And so the first strand is feeling safe, being safe, feeling unthreatened. The second is creating good associations as much as we can. And then the third is actively training them, actually developing the skills that they need to be successful in their new world, to be successful pets. And there's while there's a fairly long list for your average pet dog, let's say, right? They have to be able to be in a house, they have to be able to go in and outdoors. Some of them have to learn to ride in elevators, go up and down stairs, get in cars, ride in cars, see people on the street, walk by other dogs, walk on leash. Um, all kinds of different skills that they need to have. And sometimes when we have these animals that are coming from these really deprived environments, we need to start off by thinking, what are maybe two or three behaviors that this animal needs, and that once they have this skill, they'll then be able to build on that skill. That skill is going to continue to increase their opportunities to find fun things in the world, to gain access to more reinforcement in their lives. So, or that it's just sort of the foundation. It's just sort of the start. It's the first chain in the behavior. And in many cases, I will say, and just suggest, that the first behavior that we have to teach many of these animals is to take and eat the food we offer them within a relatively short period of time, seconds, right? Which is typical. With your average dog, you reach out, you hand them a treat, they're going to eat it, right? They do something, you hand them the treat, they gobble it down right away. But for many of these animals, they can't. People will say they're not food motivated. They won't eat, but they will eat. They just won't eat while the person is there, or it may take some time for them to eat. They may only eat at night when everybody in the house is quiet and asleep. So that is a skill. That's a skill. Take the food from me and eat it. Now, whether they take it from my hand or I drop it in front of them, that's gonna play into it as well. Doesn't We can decide which is it going to be, but we need that skill, and they need that skill because if they don't have that skill, then it's going to be hard for us to train them. And so that's that, along with being able to be approached by people, is another important skill. Remain in place calmly, happily, while somebody approaches you, because that's what we really need. I think, especially with dogs, is they need to have that skill. They don't necessarily need the skill of being able to approach people. If they get lost, it's nice to have a dog who goes. And my border collie Finn, I was away on a trip, and we recently gotten this wonderful border collie Finn, who my husband took him out for a walk, and he ran off. And the dog was later found sitting on somebody's like porch swing rocker at a house, because he just went off after something, didn't know, couldn't get his way back, and he just went and found people and hung out, kind of just waited for people. Was hanging out. I don't know what he thought, but it was good, that rather than going and hunkering down somewhere, hiding from people, he was just like, okay, well, maybe good things will happen here, because he'd been lucky, because he'd had those experiences in his life. We were like home number 7 for this dog, and he was pretty good at that, at finding getting lots of reinforcement from people in lots of ways, especially frisbees. But yeah, so that's when we take in these dogs, that's basically the framework. And what I usually expect is that many of the people who do get involved in rescue and in foster care, you've got some pretty good skills already. Your skill set is already, it's a pretty good skill set. And your intentions and your motivations are usually good. And so that's what I love about this community, is that people have these great motivations and intentions for helping these animals, and that sometimes it just means that ourselves have to practice some new skills, and sometimes that skill is just like back off, just take a deep breath and just watch and observe, and then thoughtfully try to initiate behaviors from the animal that we can then reinforce. And that's how we do it. And that's how we do it with all of them. Whether they're puppy mill dogs, hoarder dogs, just dogs in transition, moving homes, whatever. That braid applies to all of them. And and like I say, they're not things that we do one, then the other, then the other. Usually they're a braid. And so they're co-occurring. At least we should think of them as co-occurring while we're interacting with the dog. Okay, well, that was just about 30 minutes, a little less than 30 minutes, which may be quite enough. So thank you for joining me. And looks like this magnetic storm hopefully has managed to take a break, and I've got some good satellite internet here. All right, friends. Well, take care, and please, give this post a like, and add a comment, share with your friends. All right, stay well. Ha, I got to figure out how to end. Oh, there it is. Okay, see ya. Bye.